we try as best we can, as Mr. Simons has pointed out, to keep them here in the district where we can provide better service for less money. Not only better service for those kids, but it also redounds to the benefit of the other kids who are here in the system with them.
Is that an avenue going forward that the legislators, that maybe parents can get involved with?
It is one of the things that legislators are seriously looking at. When we went to the Day on the Hill last week, the Senate chair of the Education Committee, the chair of the Senate Education Committee, listed that as one of his priorities. The chair of the...
Who that is?
Antonioni, Senator Antonioni, and Senator Representative Larkin. Harkin, excuse me, is actually a former special ed teacher. She is the chair of the House Committee, so it is near and dear to her. And I'm optimistic that there'll be additional funding, and Mrs. Colella was there as well.
There was quite a discussion on special education. Probably, I would say, 200 to 300 school committee members and superintendents from across the state. There is a piece of legislation pending. I don't have the House bill number, but it was filed originally by Representative Hal Lane and Lyda Hawkins on special education. And part of that bill would fund certain costs in special education at 80 to 90% above 3 times foundation budget. So it gets, all these little, legislative formulas. But looking beyond that, some of the discussion coming from some of the other towns was very interesting, because you could sit there as North Reading and hear Hamilton Wenham stand up and speak, and all you had to do was take Hamilton Wenham out of the sentence and insert North Reading, and they had the same problems. And one of them on special ed was, we're doing what you've asked us to do, the Department of Education, the Commonwealth. We've complied with your legislation. We're doing everything we can to keep kids included in North Reading and try to reduce out-of-district placement. Help us. Where is, let's look more at the big picture. Where's the money? So these, surprises, if a kid leaves Hamilton Wenham and comes to North Reading, in that paraprofessionals. In fact, this year, we did have to hire 3.5 paraprofessionals because children moved to North Reading or were here and identified through an IEP. We had to hire those 3.5 individuals. When we say surprise, we could put this budget to bed, balance it, do everything we need to do for April town meeting, and come September, those surprises can happen all over again. And you're absolutely right. The voices of 200 or 300 school committee members in Boston last Thursday, I think were heard, but it has to continue, and it has to come from everyone. The parents, it comes from the Mass Teachers Association. We're not alone, but yes, we have to keep fighting for the funding.
I came away from the meeting confident that unless November's referendum rolls back state taxes, the legislature will come up with additional monies. How much is still a guess.
After they pay for the big dig.
John, I don't see any other hands.
Can I ask some questions on technology? When I read this, I see we got a computer lab, 85,000, and we went down in the supplies, another line 10, I read over there like 173. So my question is, I don't have the warrant in front of me, but there's going to be a line item, I imagine, that says computers in it. How much is that?
$100,000.
I'd like to know, I don't have to know it tonight, but I'd like to know how much money do we have in this system that's connected with the word technology? Because there's some people in the town that hearing all this stuff, technology, and the question is, what are we getting for it? I mean, everybody's gonna say, wow, we got math scores and stuff, but we're sinking big money into technology, and the question I'm asking is, you got 100,000 over there, you got another 200,000 I just showed you here, that's 300,000, and it's gonna be, as the years go on, it's gonna get more, so what are we getting for it?
The $73,000 in line 7 here is actually basically supplies and software. The $100,000 will purchase new equipment.
But see, excuse me, I looked at line 10, Steve.
Library?
It says computer lab. On page 5.
I'm sorry, you're on the salaries page.
Yeah.
These are the aides in each lab.
Well, they're going up. The aides are going up. We're cutting the supplies, and we're cutting the amount of computers that I did was much more than 100,000. So what are we adding people for?
We're not adding any people on that line. The amount of money is going up.
The amount of money's going up.
Remember, in the budget column, that money did not include last year's 4%. When we brought this before the town, there was a separate item called negotiations, where the 2.5% was funded. So that the increase of 12,000 represents the 4% for last year, the 3.5% for this year, and are there steps in that contract?
Steps, right.
And steps in that contract if anyone was not at the top of scale. I don't know how many steps are in that particular area. 5? I can't remember all of them. But so there might be there are step increases. There are certainly step increases there, as well as the 2 years of cost of living increase.
I remember reading the fine print of the Is there anything in that education reform that says that we have to have a certain amount of technology in the school system? So much funding for it?
Actually, we are obliged to report to the Department of Education, and I thought somebody would ask the question, so I brought today the latest publication on technology profiles. So I'll just give you a sense of where North Reading stands when you talk about the investment for technology, which I believe is not sufficient, not only for new technology, but not to maintain the current technology that we have. We think about technology in terms of not only the hardware, but the networking, the wires, the software, and also the personnel to support that. But let's speak specifically about hardware. In order to keep current with present software and connectivity to the network, you need to have a computer that is classified as a type A or type B. Presently, if we're looking simply at ratios, access to one of these kinds of computers, the statewide average for all schools across the state, 7.4 students for one computer of type A and B. The current year for North Reading shows 13.4 students per type A or type B computer. Where are we falling down? We're falling down dramatically at our elementary schools, particularly at the Batchelder School. We have moved forward at the little school because of the building project, but still it has a way to go. We will move forward with the Hood School project because technology is built into that project. And we are moving forward in the middle school and slowly moving forward in the high school. The other figure to consider is what percent of the classrooms have access to a network. So in terms of North Reading, internet access, well, let's see, the statewide average is 69.2% of classrooms within all of the classrooms in the state are connected to the network. And in North Reading, that figure is 40.7%. So again, based on just on that information alone, North Reading continues to be behind. Technology, when you start talking about its impact on learning, certainly that's a very legitimate question. But it is where we live now. Students, not only from simple word processing, but it's the ability to access information, to access that information in very complex ways, and to do that beginning as early as our elementary schools, to be able to share information between student to student, and to be able to project that information out, to analyze it, and to do something with it. It's a trite phrase to say that we live in a technology-rich environment. We live in an information age, and we need to train our students to be prepared no matter what they're going to do. And that begins as early as our elementary schools.
George, I saw you next, but
Yeah, I got numerous questions. I want to start off with one, I didn't anticipate this one, but on this sheet that we were handed out.
the scenarios.
Yeah, one of the questions, and I wonder if it was touched on, but it's still not clear to me. I noticed that for the 3 elementary schools, the Batchelor, and Little, the amount budgeted is pretty much the same. And I don't know, maybe it was misinterpreted information previously presented, but if the building project at the Hood School and at the Little School includes a lot of the technology that we're looking for to put into the schools, and also the fact that it's making repairs on the buildings over and above just additional classrooms, I don't understand why they're all still the same. I would have expected the expenses for the Batchelor to far out exceed those for the Hood and the Little.
Those lines basically talk about classroom supplies, textbooks. The maintenance would come further down in the buildings and grounds area, which covers all of the system, regardless of building. And the technology we've been funding, new computers, we've been funding through separate warrant articles, not as part of this budget.
So these are all items that the override and the additions, they're not.
Straight
Those
up.
don't touch these.
Those are all disposables, right? Most of them?
Textbooks, workbooks, paper, all kinds of supplies within the classroom and school setting.
And I just would like to put in a little plug for the high school. I was disappointed when I look at these numbers to see how much of a cut the high school has to take, considering that the high school is the culmination of all the elementary schools put together. So the numbers, we look at these numbers based on a per student, it seems as though the high school and the middle school are taking an awfully big cut compared to the bachelor schools when you show the numbers coming down. You show the 30% was taken off of what they asked for at the high school in 36.
Remember, those percents compare to the budget for this year, and we asked the business manager to go back and look at the actual spending in FY '99. So the middle school number, like the elementaries, is virtually identical to the FY '99 spending. There is a drop at the high school, off the top of my head.
Yes.
Like,
A point I'd make about the high school, we are hoping next year to maintain our use of the athletic revolving fund to supplement the high school budget. When I say that, I mean, as many of you know, we charge students involved in athletics a user's fee to participate. And it is our intention to subsidize, if you will, the high school budget by an additional $25,000 over the amount you see there. So if we take an additional $25,000 out of the athletic user fee fund, the high school budget would be in the $232,000 range, which puts it in a similar realm in terms of cuts as the other schools. Still a cut. But
Steve, I have a couple of questions about the first 2 or 3 line items. We don't have an estimate of completion in the pamphlet that was mailed out to the homes. So I really don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to a fiscal year 2000 actual amount. The it looks as though on line items 2